Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of the Retirement Readiness Podcast. I'm Katie Umland, and of course, we have Tim Regan, the founder and wealth advisor at Prairie View.
Hey, Katie. How are you?
Hi. I feel like we have so much to catch up on.
We do.
I missed one recording for having a baby, and I feel like I just have so much I want to talk about. We're in a new studio.
I know. The world is a whole new place,
It's a
right?
whole new place.
Yeah. You leave to have a baby and everything's different.
Yeah, I just come back and where am I?
Yeah. It's funny because I was going to say that you have kind of like that new mom glow, which.
Thank you.
Yeah. Now, to me, that means you haven't slept in a week and a half, right?
The glow is like milk on my face and the bags under my eyes and the latte that I had to have to wake me up this morning.
Perk you up a little bit? Yeah. How are things with the baby?
Very good. Yeah, she is an angel. She's 10 days old at this point, so Big Brother is finally adjusting, and we're all good.
Good. Well, if she's 10 days, just give him like another couple of years, and then he'll get to pounding on her and all that kind of stuff,
I think we've only had 3 hits to the face so far.
Yeah. Well, and that's when big brothers start to learn you can't hit girls and all that stuff, right?
You're like, oh, no, don't do that.
Yep.
It's that fine line. He's only 18 months old, so it's like, let him explore and check her out. I don't want to say
you don't want to make him like hands off type of thing. Yeah.
But it's also like, okay, that's a little rough. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. And how are you and Alex adjusting to it?
Good. We are lucky. Alex has a month off of work.
Oh, really? That's awesome.
Yeah, he gets a month when we have a baby. So we are, like I said, 10 days in, and I told him maybe he should go back to work. It's just we all need a little bit of routine and schedule.
For sure.
And it's nice because he works from home. So even if he does go back to work, he's still in the basement
still
and can
around.
pop up. And so we'll start doing like some half days in the mornings. He'll work for a while and then come up after nap time and get me through to dinner and bedtime. So
well, it's funny, especially this time of life, because I remember when Sarah and I had the kids, Lily and Maddie especially, our first two. I was working at that time a lot because we were just getting the business started. Mm-hmm. And so there were times I wouldn't get home till 9:30, 10 o'clock. And I remember there was one time I came in, and at the time our house had a detached garage. I pull in the garage. I start walking out towards the house. It's pitch black because it was late at night. All the lights are off in the house. Sarah's sitting on the back porch. And she was like, shh. They're all asleep. Do not wake them up. And we sat on the back porch and just caught up a little bit. So
yes, exactly. Yeah, we're right now. When Dylan goes down, we kind of be quiet in the house. Like we're a little bit let him know like we're still around. But then if Quinn starts crying, it's like run into the bedroom, close the door, don't let her wake him up.
Yeah.
So
good. Well, I'm glad you're back.
Yeah,
we had a great episode last time. Dave Cobb obviously joined us, and so he kind of sat and filled in and did a great job. But we're happy to have you back. And
I was sad I missed that episode. I like catching up with Dave. We both know him well, but I'm excited to hear that episode without me. So
for sure. And so today we've got a packed agenda, right?
Yeah, that's right. In addition to talking about compound interest, we're also going to talk about these new chairs, which I hear can recline all the way to a bed.
Yes, which is so hilarious because if you ask Rachel in the office, so Rachel's been with us 18 years.
Forever.
And she will tell you the one thing I always tease her was, Rachel, did you order a cot yet?
Yeah.
Because I need a cot after lunch. And then I got these chairs and I'm like,
oh, I finally got one.
Yeah, even better than a cot.
These new microphones, I think we just got a major upgrade.
Yeah, we did. Well, and the funny thing is, I was thinking about these cots. There have been times when once or twice in the summertime we'll have power go out at the house, and I'm a hot person. I run hot all the time. And so I've debated on, do I go to the office and sleep because we had power, air conditioning, and I'm like, shoot, we can now. Everybody's got their own bed. I mean,
this is awesome.
Yeah, especially now they're almost empty nesters, so we can roll them out.
Yeah, talking about lack of sleep, I'm like, ooh, I'm going to just get cozy here.
How about it?
This is awesome. So it's still a little bit of a work in progress.
Yeah.
I think with the studio, we're not 100% set up yet, but it's exciting.
It is. Well, and what's really cool is how to see kind of the progress or the progression of where this was. I remember when we first were starting, you and I were like, okay, what do we say? How do we do this? All that kind of stuff.
We were awkwardly set up in the front of the office
the
first time.
Yeah.
We're trying to close the shades and Oh, I can hear you through the wall,
Yeah,
and
yeah, it was,
it was a little bit of a mess,
yeah,
but
yeah. But here we are now.
cool,
Yeah,
awesome. Um, well, do you want to start with mailbag
yeah, yeah.
before
I
we
think
dive
that's a good
in?
idea.
So today we're talking about the power of compound interest. But before we dive into that, we had somebody submit a question about Roth conversion, and should I do a Roth conversion before the end of the year?
Yeah, so I think that that's a question that we always start to think about as you get into the fall
This
time.
season, yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of times people think about their taxes post first of the year, kind of like January to April is when they're thinking about it. But with Roth conversions, you can't do those. In order to do it uh, and have it on this year's tax return, it has to be done before the end of the year.
Okay.
It's one of those
So it's not
things
just
that
before you file, it's
exactly.
December 31st.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so a lot of times what we're seeing is that, especially as people are in retirement, their income it puts them at a certain tax bracket. And we talked, I think, a couple episodes ago about Medicare and how much your premium can go up if your income goes up
Mm-hmm.
and all those things. Well, what happens is that a lot of times as people retire, they might not need to take money out of their 401k or IRA initially in retirement. And so they let it sit there and grow. But at age 73, they're forced to take money out. And what can happen is if they let it grow too big, then the amount they're forced to take out also gets big. And now all of a sudden they're bumped into a higher bracket. Maybe they're paying more in their Medicare premiums. And so the strategy then really becomes before I even get to 73, can I be taking some money out of these IRAs, pay tax on it a little
A
bit at a
little at a
time,
time.
and try to manage that long-term liability? And if you can, then the logical place to put it is into a Roth IRA, because in Roths, if you might remember, uh, you pay tax on it when it goes in, but you never pay tax on that money again. Your kids never pay tax on that money.
Okay.
So it really is a really good strategy if you're in that place where you've got some room in your bracket, you have some room uh, with your Medicare premium, and you can take some extra income. Those Roth conversions, especially now before the end of the year, are a great idea.
So is that something that you as a financial planner would help with, or as an accountant would help with?
So both, either or. So in our practice, we do what if tax kind of planning, if you will, all the time for our clients, where we'll look at last year's tax return and we'll say, okay, here's where your taxes were, here's what your income changes were this year, here's where that puts you for your bracket and your what they call IRMA, your Medicare premium, and we help you make that decision. Or your accountant always is a great resource as well.
Okay. So now's the time to start making those decisions so that it can be
Finalized before the end of the year.
December
Yeah, well,
31st.
and especially if you've not done one before, so you don't have a Roth maybe opened up to receive the money, then you need to get ahead of it because you have to open the account, then you have to try to
Paperwork
transfer,
and
yeah, all that kind of stuff.
you
Where
forgot to file your paperwork.
yeah, Mike Wiskowski, yeah, from Monsters Inc. Okay, Roz. Yeah.
Okay, so let's dive into this week's episode. We're talking about compound interest. I think when I first think of compound interest, I think of being young and taking advantage of that early on.
100%. There's actually a book. It's really a pretty good book. It was written by a financial advisor, and it's called The Lost Decade. And it really talks about the decisions that you make in your 20s have a huge impact on where you are financially for the rest of your life.
Doesn't that sentence sound so scary though? Like the decisions you make in your 20s.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
Whoa.
whoa.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what you were like in your 20s. I know what I was like in my 20s. So.
You do know what I was like in my 20s. You were there. Yeah. Yeah. And for us, it's crazy to think about that, right? It's
It
crazy
is.
but, and the way that I like to think about it is every decade that you miss, you have to double the amount that you would have saved from the previous decade. So if you wait until your 30s, you have to double the amount to get to the same dollar amount. You wait till your 40s, you're doubling that amount. Because compound interest or compounding and growth is such a
Such a
major
major.
major deal. And it's funny because even though you think about that at a young age, it kind of goes back to that old adage, well, when's the best time to do it? If you didn't do it then, do it now, right?
Now, yeah. today, no matter what.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. And so, to your point, when you're young, it's an important thing to get started on.
So it's important when you're young, but like you said, if you didn't when you're young, still do it. Like don't
Yeah, don't
don't
wait.
say, "Oh, I missed it when I was 20." Like
Yeah,
it's still
exactly. Well, and it's funny because I even think about that with other decisions too. We hear clients a lot of times that are maybe, well, I'll use me as the example. I'm 45, right? So we're in a stage of life where kids are now going off to college, and we have some more free time and that kind of stuff. And for me, I'm thrilled in the business we have and the career we have. But there are some of our clients that start to say, I always wanted to be a nurse. I wish I would have went to school to be a nurse. And we're like, well, wait a minute. You're in your 40s.
yeah,
It
that's a
takes a few
lot.
years to get to be a nurse, and then you got a long
Long
time that you
time.
could. And so it's like it's not just the interest that compounds. We really like to think about it in financial planning. Think about it as all of the decisions you make, and how does that compound across your life.
Not just dollars saved, but
Yeah. So and I almost think about it like you and Alex with the baby, uh, and or Dylan probably now more than the baby being at 18 months old. The the decisions you make today are going to compound into who he becomes when he's 5 and 6 and 12 and so on. And
or even simpler that we are just trying to do some sleep training with him.
yeah,
Like put in the effort on
now
now today so that in a month you're not every night struggling. It's like, okay,
exactly.
let's spend 2 days of nose to the grindstone. We'll really try to help him through this time and then it will pay off.
Yeah, and so we look at it's yes, it's money, but it's all of those decisions throughout your life, and we think about what the compound return is on those
And
decisions.
that's just goes back to two comma lifestyle.
It is completely.
And that's all tied together. It's compounding all of those decisions to make this two comma lifestyle that you're wanting to have.
Yeah.
Okay, is so why should I worry about compound growth in retirement? Obviously, we just said it makes a huge difference, but why once you're in retirement, why should we
So it's funny because it kind of goes back to that same thing we just were talking about with changing a career in your middle ages or whatever. Uh, Even though you're retired, there's still a long time of your life left to make a significant impact on the wealth that you do or don't have, right? And so, kind of to your comment around going back to that two comma lifestyle, it's all about being generous. It's all about living in abundance. It's all about living with the ability to support your family in the way that you want to. And none of those things change just because I flipped the switch and I'm in retirement. All of those things that you wanted to do are still there in retirement as well. And so, even if I'm sitting at age 70 and thinking, oh man, it's too late. No, you've got another 20
20
years
years?
that you're going to be here, 20 years plus potentially. And kind of like we were just talking about with mom. Uh, Grandma lived to be
90.
94.
Yeah.
So that's a long
It's a long
time.
time.
A lot of compounding can happen.
Yeah, exactly. And it feels like, I feel like when people say, "Oh, I'm retirement," it feels like you're at the end, but that's still a
It's a
long.
long time.
You could still have a really long time. That's a whole like third of your life,
Yeah. No, exactly.
quarter of your life, third of your life. Like
Yeah.
that's a long
It's a
time. So
significant thing. Well, and really it goes back to even when you talk about like the young people saying, "Oh, don't miss out saving in your 20s." Well, when you're in retirement, that's also a time for you to look backwards and say, "What decisions would I have made when I was in my 20s, and how do I help my grandchildren do that?" Right? And so sometimes it seems like it's insignificant, but for some of our retirees, we'll even help them set up monthly savings plans for their grandchildren, where maybe when their grandchildren are younger, in their single digits, for example, you put $50 a month away, and by the time they get to college age, it's a
so
fairly significant amount of
yep.
money. And you think, well, it's $50 a month. Well, it adds up pretty quick. And so it's when you think about that compounding decisions, it's never too late to make some of those choices.
And I think about it similarly. I know we have an upcoming episode kind of all about wellness and keeping your mind and body healthy through retirement, but I also think about it in those terms of muscle growth or muscle definition or body composition. It's the same thing. Like once you start working out, that start takes a long time. But then once you start getting some of that muscle growth, muscle compounds on muscle,
Yep,
and things start really clocking.
absolutely.
And that kind of reminds me of that too. It's like it's hard to start, but once you do, and once you kind of get some momentum, it works for you.
It does 100%, 100%. Yeah,
Muscle burns more fat, that it's like that's kind of the same thing.
yeah. Well, and what's funny with all that is when you talk about that compound and how things compound over time, uh, it works to the negative side too sometimes. Where I don't know if you've ever had it. It's like a rainy day, and you're like, I'm gonna be lazy today. I'm gonna sit on the couch and do
Yeah.
nothing. And you're like,
You feel way worse
way
by the end
worse.
of the
Yeah,
day.
you're thinking I'm gonna feel. It's gonna be so nice. I'm gonna feel so energized, and you're
Yeah.
like, no, it's horrible. I feel.
Or like you used to be able to eat 2 cookies every night, and now you suddenly want 3 every night.
Yeah,
You get
exactly.
used to the
Yeah,
two,
yeah.
and it has
Yeah. Well,
compounded.
well, if two's all it takes, then why
Yeah.
not? It's fun. It is so funny you say that. I've been reading a book recently called Tiny Habits, and it talks about how you can make like these little changes. And in the introduction to the book, he actually uses cookies as the example. And he said, here I'm sitting, and I think he was in his 40s, uh, and I've gained about 15 pounds more than I wanted to. And I'm like, how did that even happen? He's like, then it dawned on me that every night after dinner, I now have 2 double stuffed Oreos. He's like, at 2 double stuffed Oreos adds up to, I forget how many calories, 300 calories. Well, if I take 300 calories times 365 days, that's 10 pounds.
Yeah.
He's like, and it was 2 Oreos.
And
And
now I'm double stuffed.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so to your point, it's those decisions happen, and it's the compounding of one decision on the next, plus those decisions themselves compounding that can really change the trajectory of a
Alex and
lifestyle.
I always talk about. I don't know why working out keeps coming up for me, but we have such different opinions about working out in general. I want to wake up, work out first thing, because then I make better decisions the
Yep.
rest of the day. It just sets me up to make a better decision. And he would rather work out at like 10:30 at night, and I just don't understand that at all. But it's the same thing. Like if I don't work out in the morning, then I feel like I can have that donut for
Yeah.
breakfast.
Yeah.
But if I just worked out, I feel like, oh, I better have some eggs for breakfast
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah. Well,
It
yeah.
just is a mindset.
It is. And I think the same thing happens with your money. I think that when you get used to making poor decisions, or it's like if I get in a hole and all of a sudden I'm spending too much money. I like to think about it like everybody talks about budgeting. I'm not a big budgeter, but I think about it like checkbook leakage, where I just have money that leaks out of my checkbook that I don't really anticipate. I didn't plan on spending, but it just kind of leaks. And when I get into that routine, and all of a sudden I look and say, oh, I have to make some changes, it's really hard because there's not one thing I can eliminate to get
Right.
rid of the leakage. It's the fact that I'm going to Starbucks and I'm, spending money over here, and so then when it comes time for me to then say I'm going to change, well, if I think, well, should I buy that cup of coffee at Starbucks? I'm like, well, it's $7. What difference is $7 going to make? I'll just go do it. Same thing like when you're not in the mode of working out and thinking about the positive sides of being healthy. All of a sudden, you're like, it's one donut. What's one donut going to
Right.
do, right? It's
And 10 donuts later, you realize, like,
yeah.
oh, whoops.
Yeah. So so we're talking a lot about kind of those habits and things, but I think that when you look at how does that affect your money even in retirement, there's a direct correlation where the decisions that you make when you're early in retirement are going to have a compound effect when you're later in retirement. So if you hit retirement and you're like, holy cow, look at, I just rolled over my 401k. I got a couple $1 million in there. That's more money than I've ever seen. I've never had that before. And you start using it like it's,
Water.
yeah. Next thing you know, those decisions at 65 or 62 are going to compound. So now when you're 75, you're like, oh man, maybe I can't take the trips anymore. I can't do the stuff with the grandkids I wanted to because
Or
of that.
opposite, and you think, oh, I don't want to run out. I'm not going to spend any of it. And then you get to be 90 and you're like, I should have spent more.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had plenty. Or
No, you're right. And it's so funny how we have clients that usually they're on one end of the spectrum or the other. They're either like, hey, lottery jackpot, and they start blowing through it too fast, or they're the opposite, and they're like, I realize that this is all the money I'm ever going to have in the world. And that's really kind of where that 2 comma lifestyle comes in, where it's finding that balance where I can feel like I'm living in abundance. I feel like I can do the things that I want to, but I know what those boundaries are, so I don't end up getting into a bad situation.
Compound, I think it can be so exciting when you think about compound interest if you're on the right side.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it can feel like, man, we are crushing it. But if you're not, it feels like, shoot, I really missed it. So,
Well, and that's the problem too now is you start to see as we're seeing interest rates come up. We've had uh, a decade and a half or maybe 2 decades of really low interest, interest rates, at least historically low. And so sometimes people get in the mode of I can finance that, and it's not really. It doesn't really punish me too much. I can get away with that. Well, now when you're seeing mortgage rates that are back in the sevens,
yeah.
and you're seeing, if anybody that has credit cards, I mean, there's no get out of jail free card with
Yeah.
those. All of a sudden now that compound interest is working against you
Mm-hmm.
rather than working for you. So like you said, once you get down, it can feel like, man, how do I get
How
out
do I
and
get
get on the
out?
top side of it?
Well, I think that brings us to our closing here. I don't know that I have anything else to say
No.
about compound interest. I think I talked more about not interest in just other real life
Well,
examples.
I think
than-
well to me it's maybe we used interest in a different way. It's what interests you, not just
interest you.
yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Do you want to wrap it up with kitchen chats?
Yeah, so I think it's funny when we sit down and how many times. So for those if we haven't talked about it before, our dad, Katie and I are brother and sister, by the way. Our dad was in the business. He and I were in the business together for a long time, and when we first started, all of our meetings were held across the kitchen table from people, and then we started talking about, we said, it would really be cool if we could start combining all of these things that we have learned sitting across the table from people, as well as thinking about when you sit down as a family and you talk as a family and you're sitting across the kitchen table. And so we always thought that it'd be really cool if we could come up with a, lessons learned around the kitchen table type of a thing. And I think that this episode kind of lends itself very well that way, because as you sit down and you're across the table from folks, and it's the stuff that you hear in our grandmother. We talked about our mom's mom, who lived to be 94, Grandma Becker. She was one of those Depression era people. And whenever you took a bath at Grandma's house, Katie, what was the thing you hated?
This much
Yep,
water.
you only get that much water. Now, I think some of that also comes from the fact that, even when she started raising her kids, they didn't have indoor plumbing at that point in time, and so they were still going out to the well to get stuff. And so I think that was part of it. But she also always would tell you, waste not, want not. Graham would tell you constantly, waste not, want not. And I think that today, when we talk about compound interest, we talk about the decisions you make. Some of the things that I think we've slipped away from personally, I think society as a whole, is we lose track of waste not, want not. And I think that we think it's kind of a throwaway society sometimes. And sometimes the best decisions you can make are the ones that say, hey, I'm not going to waste that. I'm not going to go out and buy the new thing. Instead, I'll make do with what I have. And those decisions also help to compound into that generous or abundant lifestyle. So waste not, want not.
Waste not, want not. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Retirement Readiness Podcast. Thanks for welcoming me back after
Yes.
missing one episode.
Well, we'll see if we let you back.
Yeah.
We came back this time. We'll see about next time. Well, and maybe one of these times we have to have Quinn and Dylan on the show at least
I don't
to
know.
say hi.
Maybe like some behind the scenes or something. That I think all these lights would be down.
Yeah. How about it? How
Would
about
be a
it?
mess.
The microphone be played with, all kinds of stuff. So, well, it's good having you back, Katie. Glad you're here.
Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.